All righty, there we go. Welcome, July 15th. Welcome to another Water Cooler Wednesday. Joined as always by Dwayne Gibbs. Dwayne, what's happening?
Hey man, good morning.
Good morning to you. Um, got some stuff. I got an early start this morning and getting to work and hmm, there's just some things, Water Cooler Wednesday. Sometimes I have lessons for you. Other times it's meant to be what's going on, what's happening, what's the latest thing you see, and two things already this morning, and man, I just sometimes just shake my head at one of the things that I want to talk through. Don't have slides for it because I've been working on some stuff, but I don't even need slides for what we're gonna cover here, and it's again, there's so many lessons in some of this stuff where, I've just unfortunately seen people make mistakes and it ends up costing them a lot of money because there's always a cost, as we've always said, there's always cost to education. You're going to pay one way or another. And I know you guys have probably heard that before, but it's absolutely true. And I'm going to give you a good case study of that this morning because I don't know. And again, my purpose in going through this, I'm not looking to call anybody out. I'm not looking to embarrass everybody. So I don't need to put a PowerPoint together on this one. But it does irritate me because a lot of times I see it enough where I think it's done on purpose, where people are looking for the next sucker to come along. I don't know in this particular case if that's true or not. They're just doing it out of ignorance on both sides. I really don't know. But when you see this kind of stuff enough, I can't help but they're just laying it out there and hoping just some sucker comes by and doesn't know what they're doing. And so I know this is probably something that we've talked about years ago, maybe even on this format, maybe on some other formats, Dwayne. But you'll see what I mean as I go through it, right? So I'm looking at listings, which I do every day, and with the inventory the way it is, and I've talked about this about a month ago. There's still more performing notes than non-performing notes, right? That's where the inventory is. But there's a lot of good performing notes, so it's a good market, good time for that. And I know there's an attraction to non-performing notes, and a lot of that traction in non-performing notes are based upon stories from when non-performing notes were very prevalent. And they were kick ass because you could buy them really cheap. And back then, you bought them cheap enough, you could make dumb mistakes and still make money. No question about it. Those days are not here right now, everybody, because inventory doesn't have those prices down low enough to do that. If you're getting into NPLs, not performing loans today, you better know what the heck you're doing. You better have your numbers tight because that will come back and haunt you if you don't know what you're doing. You can't base upon the buying decisions going, oh, well, I've heard non-performing notes are the best way to make. Well, there was a time, absolutely, but things change. So I see this listing, Dwayne, and says the latest BPO, and I'm quoting directly from it here. The latest BPO as of April 23rd, 2026, is 85 to $100,000 quick sale value.
Mm.
Okay. Sale price is based on the value, not the UPB. And what he's saying there, or she, whoever's listing this, is saying that they're pricing this note not on UPB, but on the value of the property. All righty. Recent photos show it's mainly land. The house is a teardown. Well, you can't even see the house through the woods. I mean, it's that house has been sitting there vacant for gosh knows how long. So yes, it is a tear down house. And total amount owed is over $155,000 now on this loan. Okay. So to summarize all that, you've got a tear down house, you got basically land. It's land only that you're looking at here. And they're saying it's worth maybe 80, you got to go on the low end, right? $85,000. And they owe now legal fees, or sorry, legal expenses include legal balance, I should say, not just unpaid balance. Legal balance is over 155,000. Okay. So the breakdown of that is the unpaid balance, the UPB is just under 50 grand. It's 49,500 bucks. Okay. The legal balance is just under 150,000. Why the big difference, number one? So when we look at something like that,
mm.
at some point in time, when somebody falls into seriously delinquency, which is considered 90 days by 99% of the people in this industry, 99% of the people in the traditional mortgage industry. So 90 days is when it clicks over to a category called seriously delinquent. At that point in time, normally what happens accounting wise is you freeze that unpaid balance, and then all the payments that they fail to make, plus penalties and interest, accrue in what they call an accrual account. Okay. That accrual account, when you add that in to the frozen UPB, is the legal balance. Now, there could be, in addition to that, corporate advances, like if it's serious delinquent, like this appears to be, they've probably had to pay the property taxes, right? If there were a single family home that was not a tear down, there'd be, and it was occupied, there'd be insurance. So they would have to, what we call corporate advance that money. That's also collectible. If they've paid attorneys legal fees to pursue foreclosure, that would be added in there. So the legal balance includes the UPB, the accrued interest plus taxes, interest and penalties plus expenses. Okay. So that's why the big difference there. Now, the monthly payment on this would have been, they don't even have it on there. So I can't even tell you what the monthly payment would be. I can tell you that oh, they don't have that either. I was going to say the original loan. But the balance is down to 49,000 bucks, right? So it's safe to say that to grow a $100,000 arrearage account, that thing has to be vacant or not paying for a long time. Agreed? I mean, it just has
100%.
to be. Whatever it would, even if the payments were $1,000 a month, which I'm sure they're not on this one. But looking at what the house was and everything else, the payments on this were probably half of that, $500 a month. Well, how many months have to go by before you've built up an arrearage of 100 grand? You know, so this thing's been sitting there forever. And the seller wants 65,000 bucks. And I get it. It's the legal balance is built. You're never going to get that legal balance.
I'm sorry. I'm
These
sorry.
people have abandoned this property. The borrower, if you can ever find them, has written this thing off years ago. Okay. So this is a foreclosure.
I'm assuming it's not somebody that we trained or know.
No. And the thing is, there's a couple of things when you see deals like this. I'm gonna finish with this deal, then I'm gonna come back and change up the example a little bit because I see it that way as well. You're basically buying this land. That's what you're doing, everybody. On a note like this, when it's that delinquent, it's built up that much of an arrearage account, you're buying the land. And this guy wants 65,000 for it,
Or girl.
walk away, and it's worth 85. So you're going to pay 65 to make 20,
Hmm.
but you're not going to make 20 because you got to pay a real estate commission more than likely. You've got to probably tear down the house. Maybe not. You've got to foreclose, certainly for that. Um, so you're not selling a note. So I want you all to recognize that when is a non-performing note really not even a note anymore? This is the case. And the other thing that should be glaringly obvious to you guys is if this deal's so great, why the heck doesn't this guy just foreclose?
Good question.
You know, why? Well, that would beg for
Hmm.
one to know, well, what's the foreclosure process in South Carolina? And if you can't find that in 2 minutes, everybody, you don't know what you're doing. Okay. I'll just be very blunt on that. It's very, I don't expect, and I myself, I don't know what every latest state does time frame money wise. I create spreadsheets every year and things like that where I can have a reference to look at, but you never know in what states they're going to change some foreclosure laws or time frames and go from, well, contested to uncontested. There's all these little nuances that change, and you're not expected, one would never be expected to know all that. But geez, you should know how to look it up. You should know how to get that very, very quickly. So the overall picture is filing to lawsuit typically takes 4 to 6 months if uncontested. Highly, highly likely this is uncontested. These people walked away from this deal. I guarantee you. I don't have the paperwork. I don't need the paperwork. They walked away, the borrowers walked away from this deal years ago, never looked back, could care less. The other thing, because it's not affecting their credit score, everybody, this was a self-service loan. It's not going on a credit report. So they
That's
don't
right.
care. They've walked away years
That's right.
ago. So contested cases can take significantly longer, additional months or more. All right, couple more months, depending on the court backlog. So yeah, there's always court backlogs and things like that, but not these days. Not these days. You shouldn't have too much of a backlog because foreclosures are not as high. From the first missed payment, the auction's around 6 to 9 months, including the 120-day delinquency period. So South Carolina might require 120 versus the 90 to start the process. Okay, great. So you're going through, let's call it 10 months. Again, if the payments were $1,000 a month on this thing, which I doubt, okay, there's your $100,000. I doubt that. I bet it's half of that. But either way, why hasn't this note owner just enforced the mortgage and foreclosed upon it? It says it's a mortgage, okay? So why haven't they enforced the foreclosure on it? It only cost $4,000 to $8,000 depending upon the case. And that includes legal, that includes filing, that includes everything. Total foreclosure related costs tacked onto the debt are $4,000 to $8,000. Okay. Uncontested, going to be cheaper. Contested, going to be more expensive. So this one's leaning towards about 4 grand. So if this is such a great deal where the property, because I know the sale's going to be 85 to 100, but everything I've seen says it's closer to 100. No, no, no. That's the first thing we never believe. We go with the lowest number, everybody, always. So if it's worth 85, he wants 65 to have you make less than, you got 20 minus 4, that's 16, minus if you're paying a commission, you're making nothing. You're making nothing at that price, everybody. Um, if this was such a good deal, this person would have already foreclosed, put a sign out in front of the yard and sold the thing. Okay. And there's nice houses around the area. Um, so again, I don't know what the scenario, I don't know what's in the mind of the seller on this thing, but you've got to examine these deals by looking at it at all angles, everybody. And that doesn't make sense to me. So is there something screwed up in the paperwork where he can't foreclose, or the foreclosure process could be questionable or get more expensive because they did screw up the paperwork in the beginning? I don't know. Would you have to file for quiet title on this one if there's some other issue? I don't know. But again, you should be able to get a lot of information just on the surface information at looking at these numbers. And the files are available, and I could look at the files, but again, no way. And if I came back on an offer on this thing, the offer would be so low, this person would probably be insulted. But I'm putting a realistic offer on something because there's no way. Why are they entitled to the lion's share of the deal when their risk is now completely gone? Their risk and obligation is completely gone, and you're stuck with it to make less than 20 grand. 20 grand already minus 4, possibly
Mm.
more right off the top. It doesn't make sense. So when you see deals like this, everybody, that doesn't make sense, it doesn't. Okay. And believe me, a part of me really wants to look at this deal and investigate it just to really, really get into the details to see what's going on, but that's just a time waster for me, and part of me wants to send the question to them like, well, why haven't you? It's like, again, time waster for me unless I'm just building content for you guys, it doesn't make sense. So here, more than, I'm positive you're going to have an uncontested foreclosure. It's going to take now, if he hasn't started the process already, it's going to take you, another 10 months. Um,
Hmm.
your property value is probably not going to change that much. It's not an area of high turnover. It is vacant land only on there. The other scary thing I would think about on this deal is a lot of times when deeds change hand, if you were to buy this, and they see that if you did end up buying it in foreclosing, and they see that property taken back, you might trigger an inspection, and then they go out there and they go, "Ooh, this is a hazard." What if some neighborhood kid starts to go into the house there? It's abandoned and it's in bad shape, and then you either are forced to tear it down or you simply have to secure it, and that's going to cost you, some time and money, that sort of thing. So there's just a lot that could go wrong with something like that. So examine that stuff, everybody. Really think through why, if this is so good, why is this seller not taking action on it themselves? Because if I was the note owner on this one, that's exactly what he should have done a long time ago. In fact, what I would do is as soon as this note really started going bad on it, and as soon as I realized that the property was vacated, not only would I have started the foreclosure process, but I would put a for sale sign right up. They've abandoned the property. I'm in the foreclosure process. I'm going to put a for sale sign. I'm starting that sale
Sure.
process immediately because I want to
Yep.
find a buyer. It might be a neighbor driving by every day. There's nothing in front of that property, and a neighbor might want to add that to their parcel, and or the acreage that they have over there. So you can't. You've got to look at all sides on this, and it's just a bad deal. This is why in the note business, you've got to know performing side, you got to know non-performing side, but you know what? It also helps if you have some good real estate knowledge. No
Yes.
question about it. Because you're buying real estate here. That's really all you're doing. You're buying real estate by way of a non-performing note. That's really what you're doing. So you have to be able to value it accordingly. We're in a deal like this, you're throwing out your note buying criteria. For example, I always talk about 70%, is the most I would pay. That's for a performing note, everybody. This is not, this is a whole different story. Here you're buying land, okay? And you've got a legal process involved. You're going to foreclose. There's time involved with that. You got to change your criteria really quick based upon what you are looking on. All right. Now let me change the example up a little bit. Okay,
Can
so
I say
that's the
something real
example.
fast?
Yeah,
Yeah. So I know you're talking about knowledge of having real estate and all, but it also sometimes, I shouldn't say sometimes, you got to have some common sense about this too.
yeah,
What logically makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that's what takes taking a step back and just going, it's a deal, but why, you're right. It's such a simple question to ask yourself is why would they have done it?
Yeah.
And then you start looking at that and you're going, yeah, why wouldn't they? Because if they can get 65 grand out of you right now, they'd much rather do that. That's your answer. So let me switch this up a little bit. I just went through the example as is. But a lot of times what I see is this. Let's take the same numbers, but let's forget that you have a huge $150,000 rearage account. Okay, let's throw that out. Let's throw that out just to change up the example is what I'm doing here. So we're going to pretend in this case study that there is no arrearage account. And let's say they are now 90 or 120 days delinquent. So maybe they owe 1,500, 3,000 bucks, whatever it is. Okay, so we'll say they owe $3,000 on this loan, in addition to the balance, which is we'll say 50,000 to keep it easy. Okay, so they owe 50,000 plus the small arrearage of 3 grand is how I'm changing up this example. So the legal payoff would be $53,000, and let's say that's substantiated, meaning that's provable and everything else and collectible. Okay, great. Because it's in this situation where it's going to foreclosure, a lot of times I see sellers that will still want a premium. So they're still going, hey, you're going to foreclose upon this. It's worth up to 100 grand. So I'm pricing it on the value of the property, not the UPB. In other words, I still want $65,000 because for you, you're going to turn around and foreclose and sell it for 100 grand and you're going to make 40. That's the pitch. Okay. Here's the flaw within that, everybody. If you pay more than the unpaid balance or legal payoff, so in my refashioned example here, 53,000, and you're going to pay 65, thinking I'm going to foreclose, sell it for 100 grand. That's your thought process. Here's where you're going to get burned. What if they come up with the $3,000 to catch up the loan?
Ooh,
They still now only owe 50 grand. You paid 65 for it. You got 3,000 back. You're in it for 62. What if the house was in good shape and somehow they had a relative and they came up with the money? They paid off the loan in full of $53,000 before you took it to foreclosure that you paid $65,000 for. That's a big mistake people run into. They think, well, if I foreclose on it, I'll get the property. No, you may get the property, but you also may get paid off at the sale. So that's another thing is if you bought this and you paid 65,000 and you go to a foreclosure sale, your maximum strike price is what you're owed, not what you paid. It's
that's
what
right.
you're owed. So if that's $53,000 and the gavel goes down and some investor bid $53,100, guess what? You get $53,000 at the sale. You don't get the property. It's either or, and you paid 65 for it.
Mm,
Mm-mm. Can't do it that way, everybody. When
That's
people in non-performing loans are basing stuff on the value, not the UPB, you've really got to examine that. And you've got to go, wait a minute. Why wouldn't they just foreclose? Why wouldn't they do this? And why should I pay more than what is owed? Because they could come up with the money. So again, either by design, either by ignorance, or just not thinking, on both sides, the buyer and seller side. Again, I don't know what it is, but it just not priced the right way, and that's where you're going to get yourselves in trouble.
yeah.
So yeah, I looked at that one this morning, and that kind of
That's a valuable lesson,
kind of got me going. I got another. We got a little bit more time. I got another one. This won't take as long. One of the things that, so next topic, everybody. Um, One of the things that is very common these days, and I like it, is that you've got real estate investors that have learned that they can sell these homes quicker with less headaches and at a good price if they offer financing. Great. Now, that hasn't been actually a hidden secret, but there's been more education in that area, and there's really been a surge of those type of notes that I see on a regular basis, which is great because it does provide brand new inventory, which I love, but it does come again with a caution. Most of these quick flippers are companies that will buy nationwide, sight unseen. They buy them really cheap through probate action, through a foreclosure, directly through HUD, some kind of very motivated seller. And I mean very cheap. I've seen some where they're buying them for $10,000, $15,000, turning around and selling them within a month for 50, 60 grand,
Mm.
as is. And that's where you have to be careful because they buy them cheap and they buy them under market value. I completely get that. And if they can buy it cheap enough, there is built-in equity in that model, okay? But there's also risk within that model, which is that the property is not in good condition and they sell it as is for an artificially inflated price. Well, how can they get more than what it's worth? Because you have people who want to buy a house and they're offered financing and all they look at is it's only $400, $500 a month. And that's cheaper than rent. Right, Dwayne? I mean, we see
No
that
question.
all
No
the time.
question.
It doesn't matter I don't care what the price is. What are my monthly payments?
That's exactly it.
$500 a month. Well, rent in the area is 15. So guess what? We'll buy this and I'll start fixing up the house myself.
Yeah.
That's the entire thought process, everybody. That's where you really, really, really have to understand is that the true current value of the house, if we had to sell it today, could I get close to that number in an arm's length transaction? Or is that an artificially inflated price just for the sake of financing? And I see it both ways. Sometimes
Mhm.
from the same note sellers, I see it both ways because again, their model is we found a good deal. We can buy this house for 10 grand. It should be worth at least 40 or 50. What the heck? Let's buy it sight unseen. We do a rapid sale on the thing. We create the paper. And if the person doesn't pay us, a lot of times it's contract for deed. We'll take that back, sell it to somebody else, fairly quickly, or they do some kind of an option, for that person. We'll season it up a few years and then sell it. And that's where they'll cash in. Okay. And again, I have nothing wrong with that model. But what you have to be careful of again is it really the fair market value of the house? So when we're looking at this one in West Virginia, and I liked a lot of things about it, and there were other things. I always use my scale analogy. You get things working towards value and working against it, and the other thing you can do today, everybody, is learn more about borrowers than you would ever need to know. The Achilles heel for borrowers today to find out more about them, of course, is what? Social media, right? Social media.
That's it.
And I mean, I know more about this borrower than his application. I really do. And the thing is, it's a young borrower. Okay, number one, you have heightened risk as a young borrower, right? Somebody in their
Yes.
early 20s, heightened risk. Okay. Employment wise, I looked at the guy's whole history on employment and things like that. And he's a skilled laborer, no problem. And he recently started a government job, correctional facility he works at. Um, Gets paid pretty good, I would think, for a 22-year-old. I think really good. And it's a government job, which I think is harder to get fired from. Um, but it's a younger borrower buying a house as is with financing. So I made an offer on this because he has shown the ability to pay for 4 years. He's been on the new job for 2 years, so he's actually making more money now in the last 2 years than he did in the previous 2 years. So we've got 4 years of payment history on that, which I like. His job is about an hour, hour and a half away. Um, Again, it's not on a credit report anywhere, that sort of thing. So you get a little nervous on that. And I could see in the back of the house by going down the street and looking back through some houses up on the hill, I could see it needs some work, which I'm not surprised, right? They bought the note seller bought this house as is, sold it as is. And that's the other problem. When are they going to get around to fixing the house? So did they sell it at the price of the after repair value? Or did they sell it as the as is value? And that's what
Hmm.
you have to establish. So I made an offer on this deal and I made it heavily dependent on the BPO. And I let the seller know that it's a contingency in my offer, which is basically I'll pay this, but this broker's price opinion has to come in at least this amount. And that's what I did. So when I put that offer in there, I started looking myself for a local agent that could do the BPO. Couldn't find one. So I outsourced it to a third party to use their network to find an agent who could do a BPO, broker's price opinion. Got back to me this morning saying, the only person we can find that'll go out there will charge 250 bucks and they have to drive in about an hour, which means they don't know the direct area. It's going to be, yeah, what I think I said 250 bucks, which normally $100 for a BPO. Okay. Or I can have somebody go by and take pictures. Nah, that's not going to help me enough for 100 bucks. So if I'm having that hard of a time getting an agent to go out there just to do a BPO, what if I end up taking this property back? That becomes the issue. And you have to add that into weighing out a deal. So for me, not being able to have that real value, because I can't put full faith in somebody who's coming an hour, hour and a half away to come into this new town. They're getting, I don't know how much they actually, I don't know how the person actually doing the BPOs versus the 200 that they want to charge me, or 250, whatever it is, they want to charge me for that. I don't know how much the person doing the BPO does and how much effort, therefore, they would put into doing that. I'm a little skeptical on how good that valuation model is going to be. And for me, weighing out all these other things, knowing a lot about the borrower, liking some things, not liking some other things, looking at the house from the pictures that I can see, which are about a year old, knowing that there needs to be work done, knowing that the model is buy now, sell it very quickly, which they did as is, there's more risk in that. And me not being able to get somebody out that quick and knowing about the valuation was enough to tilt that scale where I go, you know what? There's more inventory out there. I don't need to force myself into a deal knowing it was that tough just to get a BPO. Okay. Now I'm not, if this was, a deal in a more populated place and that sort of thing, all of that's a lot easier, So I like this enough to take a run at it, but based upon the fact I can't get anybody out there, to do a BPO, just made it that extra where I'm like, I can't trust the value. If I take this property back, that means I'm going to have a really tough time trying to resell this property. And for that reason, it's just not worth it. I'm probably overpaying for the note. It'll put me in a tough position where I'd have to long time play it. And why? There's other inventory out there. So you never want to push yourself into a deal for the sake of buying a deal. You want to be more disciplined to know sometimes where it's like, I know I put some effort into this one. I know I researched a lot on this one, put some thought into it, but you know what? It's time to cut bait and move on, to something else. So due diligence again is always the key on this, and you can't escape it. If you're going to be in the business long term, you've got to have that discipline of just knowing to trust your due diligence, but also trust your instinct on it. And when it tilts that scale too much, where you go, it's just not worth the risk. I know there's more inventory out there. I might have to wait a little bit for it, but that's fine. I'm moving on. So turn that one down. And that's also the importance of when you're making an offer. If you have contingencies and concerns, put them in there because you don't want the seller coming back and saying, "Hey, you committed to this, and now we're going to hold you to it." That sort of thing. No, no, no. Let's look at it. Here's what I said. Here's what happened, and deals off. So there you go. You dropped off a little bit, Dwayne, so you missed the
Yeah,
core of the
but
story there. But
yeah, I lost the internet connection and I was freezing up. You were freezing up, and then I just lost it. It went, and apologize for that.
no, no problem. No. So just a deal I had to pass on. Could not get an agent. The long short of it is I couldn't get an agent to go out and do a BPO.
Hmm.
The closest one was I was either 200 or 250 bucks they wanted. They were an hour, hour and a half away.
Oh wow.
And they're like, okay, they're not going to know the area. I can't trust the BPO. And this one was so heavily contingent on on value. I just had to wait out again, just go, nope, can't do
Yeah.
it. Too much risk, and
Yeah, and
it
there's
keeps you
something to be
around a long time, everybody.
there's something to be said for that because, I would say that there are people that we have seen over the years that are hell bent on a deal, and they, oh no, I want to buy this deal and I want to buy this deal. And listen, there's other deals out there, as you know. And
Yeah.
so sometimes you just have to kick it down the road and say, hey, it's not the right one. And I'm not able to check all the boxes off that are important for me to make a decision whether this is a good deal or not. And so, we've seen people buy deals like this, and all of a sudden, at the end of the day, regret that they did because they were hell bent on buying it.
Yeah, and like I said, I was telling everybody I put research into it. I put time into it. I went through all the documents. I did research. Like I said, I researched the borrower. I researched the price. I did a lot. I reached out myself to find somebody to do a BPO before I turned to a third party. And so I invested effort into it. And I know sometimes people fall into that low. It's like, well, I've already done this much on it. Okay, I'll just rely on this BPO from this person outside the area and just to get it done, check that box. And it's like, no, you can't. You got to go back and reevaluate. And that's what
Yeah.
I did. So there you go. A lot of good lessons in there, everybody. And some of these things, it's all in the nuances. It's all in the details, everybody in the business. This is not a hard business to understand from a bigger, broader picture of things. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who train that way. They just give you the big picture, but it's always going to be in the details. It's always going to be in these what seem like little things, like not understanding the industry, not understanding why notes are priced a certain way, why they're not, accrual counts, all the things we talked about here today, BPO values, how these fix and flippers, a lot, their models work. Those are the kind of things that'll always catch up to you, so it's got to be in the details, and you want to work with somebody who knows the details. So check us out, kevinshortell.com. And again, Dwayne's got a training he's getting ready to put together for us in September, right?
Yeah, middle of September.
Middle of September. So keep an eye
Yeah.
out for that, and check out the website. You can book a call with Dwayne there as well, and talk you through it. So there you go, everybody. Thanks. Have a good rest of your day, Dwayne. Appreciate it, and
Yeah,
talk
man.
to y'all again real soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.